all you freaks, geeks, and cinemaniacs. From the heart of Hollyweird, California, at the epicenter of all things eerie and awesome, it's time for Charles Band's Full Moon Freak Show.
My next guest is not just an accomplished writer, producer, director, and actor. He's also a brand unto himself, a contemporary master of horror. Eli Roth's first feature film, 2003's Cabin Fever, immediately established him as an auteur in the genre, a reputation solidified by the success of his merciless, blackly comic 2005 film HOSTEL, and its even grislier sequel. Along the way, Eli has given us such savage films as the Italian cannibal film riff, The Green Inferno, the remake of Death Wish, with Bruce Willis taking over for Charlie Bronson, and even the family fantasy film The House with a Clock in Its Walls. As an actor, you know him from Tarantino's Inglourious Basterds, where he played the Nazi clubbing Bear Jew. More recently, he ushered his hit documentary series Eli Roth's History of Horror to the small screen. Roth is a true multi-hyphenate, and we're excited to have him on the Freak Show. Eli, welcome.
Thank you.
It's a lot of spiel. You've done so much, it's endless.
I try to keep people guessing. Like, what do you do? What are you? Are you a director? Are you an actor? Wait, I thought you, I like that. I like to, mix it up.
And didn't this all start with you like playing a chick for Penthouse? I mean, am I remembering some story where you like?
I pretended to be a woman for Penthouse when it was cyber sex was a crazy thing. People were spending 50 cents a minute to have sex with girls on the internet. But that was when I was about 20, when I was at NYU Film School.
Recently.
But the horror obsession started, I was probably 3 years old when I saw the Flying Monkeys and Wizard of Oz.
Oh, wow.
And I was obsessed with all things scary. But I was at that age when VCRs weren't out yet. So I remember like my Aunt Gladys describing Jaws to me. Like she'd come over for Shabbat dinner. I'd be like, tell me about Jaws. She's like, well, then the girl goes swimming and the shark bites her and pulls, And I was reading the books. And I remember, I think I was 6 years old when I saw The Exorcist, and it traumatized me. But I remember very vividly when it was like, again, Shabbat dinner with Aunt Gladys. And I was begging my dad to go see Alien because I just saw the TV spots and it just said Alien, rated R.
Right.
And they were going over that weird, great spots with the egg going over that weird graph, like that strange rope thing. You're like, what is this movie?
Right.
And I remember my dad said, do you want to go see Alien? So we went to see it. And of course my mom was like, Sheldon.
How old were you again?
I was 8. It was too young. Oh, for sure too young. But I was so intent on seeing it. And my parents were cool. My dad was a psychoanalyst and psychiatrist. And my mother was a painter. So my dad, but they'd grown up in New York City, and my dad had been at high school performing arts. He was going to be an actor for a long time. So it's strange I've kind of followed in like the alternate career path of what my dad had done. He'd been cast in a big show that this producer, Harold Clurman, was doing, and then he couldn't do it for some reason, and then he went into medicine. So they were super supporters of like movies and the arts. I mean, my dad, when he was in high school, was right down the street from the Actors Studio. So in high school, he'd see James Dean and Marlon Brando and like all the, like they were literally down the street from him. So I grew up with an appreciation for all of it. So
and a big supporter, obviously.
Big supporter,
of your career choice.
So when we went to the movies, it wasn't like, oh, my kid wants to see a movie. It's like, okay, this is a horror movie, and this is how they did it, and this is the director. And I remember reading the credits, and it said, I was like, what's a producer? And I was like, I think I want to do that. And my dad said, that's the producer. And the producer has to find all the money. And then it said directed by Ridley Scott. I was like, what does the director do? My dad said the director gets to spend all the money and tell everybody what to do. I was like, I think I want to be a director. And then I remember learning, I was, let's talk about a freak show. I was the freak in Newton, Massachusetts. I was the only kid who knew what a director was.
How did Newton come into this? This is where you moved?
This is where I lived. This is where I grew up.
Oh, okay.
I grew up in Newton. And so, but there was no film connection. This is outside Boston, like heavily Jewish neighborhood. Doctor, lawyer, business. Like that's it. There's the idea of being a movie director is completely insane. So, but I remember seeing on the credits produced and directed by, and at your bar mitzvah, the rabbi says, you have to announce what you want to do with your life, which is funny now thinking about that. And I remember he said to me, he's like, Eli, what do you want to do? I said, I want to be a motion picture producer director. He goes, I don't understand. Are you going to be a producer or a director? I said, I want to be a producer director. Right. And the rabbi said, why would you want to do both? And I said, because it's the only way to retain control of your cut. I was 12.
You're 12.
And I
That's
said this
awesome.
to the rabbi, and the rabbi's like, I don't understand what that means, but I'm writing that down. And I said, trust me, Stanley Kubrick says produced and directed by, and he's Jewish. And that was why I did it. I literally did it because it said produced and directed by Stanley Kubrick. I said, that's what I'm going to do. And I did it on my first film, and I wouldn't back down.
But rewinding, I want to go back to when you were younger, like the 8-year-old dude who was taken to Alien.
Yeah.
There were VCRs at that time. You just weren't watching some of these movies first on video because to see some of these classic films for the first time on the big screen is a rarefied experience. I mean, people today, the classics, no one sees them. Forget VCR; they're going to just go on Amazon and watch these movies. But going to a movie theater on the big screen and seeing some of the Exorcist, any of these movies could be traumatic.
Well, this is 79, 80. So,
Okay.
so the argument was VHS and Beta,
Oh,
and nobody
okay,
knew
right,
what
right.
was going to win out. And both of them were so expensive that I remember at there were two rich kids. It was Jeff Rendell and Greg Smith. And at their birthday party,
Two rich kids.
they had a VCR. And
right.
Greg watched Jaws at his house, and I was not invited to that party. Never forgot that. But Jeff Rendell, who's my best friend, we would watch Creepshow. We would watch films. He had a videotape of The Jerk and The Godfather. And to go to his house after school and watch The Jerk, which was R-rated, was
Amazing.
like, it was such an insane concept.
Right.
Even cable, there was one system called Starcase,
Sure.
and it had 4 channels. It was like 4 movies a month. It's like you can watch Rough Cut with Burt Reynolds, or like Take the Money and Run, or some erotic film. So it finally blew up in 1981. That was when Continental Cablevision, with 48 channels, including MTV and all this stuff, came. But I remember getting the VHS, the machine, and we could finally, like, my dad bought one, and we went to Movies to Go, which was the video store, and we rented, it was like Caddyshack, Clockwork Orange, Caddyshack and the Blues Brothers, I think were the first 2 VHS.
Wow.
But I remember having a birthday party watching Attack the Killer Tomatoes, and we had to rent a VCR from this, because the stores would rent the players. You'd have to rent the player, and it was such a novelty. We watched Attack the Killer Tomatoes and Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid. And watching a movie in your house was the most insane concept. So then, when I was about 11 or 12, that was every single weekend. I just ingested all these movies that everyone's older brother told you about. Like the kid who rode the dirt bike and could pop a wheelie would sit there and describe Last House on the Left and Texas Chainsaw Massacre to you. And they had this kind of power over kids because they had gone to see like The Gates of Hell, like these movies. I would obsessively look at the ads for, visiting hours and all these films. And then I was just like a garbage disposal. I ingested anything. I would go to the video store.
You're apparently like a film historian of horror films. Like, all this stuff.
But of like the worst movies ever made. Like, I could tell you everything. But like, I love these movies. But the thing that was so funny is I didn't know that they were Italian. I didn't know that it was Umberto Lenzi. I didn't know that, because they were changing the names, and
they would gentrify the names of the Italian dudes.
Isn't it crazy that Sergio Leone, Good, the Bad, it says directed by Bob Robertson. Yeah. You think of a French director, it's unthinkable. It's like the only Italian that kept his name was Dario Argento. But I've talked about
that was later too.
That was later. It was 68, 70. But I've talked about it with those guys. I talked with Sergio Martino, all of them, Lenzi, Deodato. They said that in order to make their movies sell overseas, they had to pretend they were American.
Absolutely.
So in a strange way, they sacrificed their personalities. So there are these great auteurs that were pretending to be other people. So when you're watching Island of the Fishmen, you're not,
which is one of the movies we have.
Exactly. Which is a fantastic score by John Barry, by the way. One of my beautiful scores.
My favorite composer.
Oh, but that John, really? Did you get Barry for that? Were you involved in that, or you just released it?
No, that's one of the movies we acquired.
You'd acquired, yeah. But I remember watching Island of the Fishmen, which is basically a Lovecraft story. It's released as Screamers in the U.S. You will see a human turn inside out.
We put it out on Blu-ray as Island of the Fishmen.
As Island of the Fishmen, and that fantastic story. But you'd never know that was a Sergio Martino film.
No.
And so a lot of these films, these directors just sort of got lost. But it was really like Argento, Suavi, of course, these other ones. So it was this interesting time where it took, before IMDb, where you watched Cannibal Holocaust and you thought that the director was probably in prison, that people actually died, that I then, got to experience on DVD and really Laserdisc, where I watched, of course, Beach Bays from Beyond. Where on Laserdisc, where I could start to really learn who these directors were.
Plus it was back then, such a jump in quality from VHS or Beta, whatever you're watching. So going back, before we zoom into like the late 80s.
Sorry, I will. You can shut me up at any
time.
No,
I'm just in a gentle way saying.
Yeah.
So again, I've talked about this, but the experience of being able to watch a movie at will did not exist prior to, whatever the hell it was, 78.
Yes.
Because when video came out, I had the first home video company on planet Earth, independent company. It was called Meta Home Entertainment. We had movies like GrooveTube and Tunnel Vision.
Wait a minute, it was which one?
Meta, and then it became Media Home Entertainment.
You started Media?
Yeah, because it was originally called Meta, and then I sold
Wow.
it some years later, and Meta was the name of my first
Okay,
wife.
GrooveTube was one of the first movies we
GrooveTube, Tunnel
rented.
Vision, and
I
then
had a Tunnel Vision one sheet because that's
Yeah.
sort of like predicted the internet. Tunnel Vision,
Yep.
uncensored and free.
So back
with
then,
Betty
my
Thomas
whole,
and Garrett Graham.
thought was, because I had an experience, again, I'm not going to retell the same story, but I had an experience where prior to Betamax, which that was the first, that was before VHS, there was no way to see a movie. So as a little kid, my dad, a filmmaker, wouldn't take me. He allowed me to stay up till 1 a.m. to see Frankenstein. I think I was 7 or 8, and it was just a mind-blowing experience. And again, this is Frankenstein snipped out. You didn't see
Yes.
some of the cool shit because it was on KTLA or something.
Yeah.
But it was a memorable experience. And then through a long story that's not worth telling right at this minute, I made a movie called Laser Blast. I had some interesting people in it who were film freaks, and they had prints and this, that, and the other. And I teamed up with Roddy McDowell and a guy named Wally Heider, who owned the Wally Heider Studios in Hollywood many years ago. Famous bands recorded there. And Roddy would be able to go to the studio, because he was a well-known actor, and borrow 35 millimeter prints of classic movies. And Wally Heider had a film chain. So we would chip in the money, and we would literally, the three of us, build a collection of King Kong and Fantasia. And luckily, the statute is long gone. So for about a year, we would not sharing, we'd each get our 3/4 inch. This is before Betamax. 1 hour, then a second tape for the next 30, 40 minutes. And I would be able to screen at my home, at will, movies for my friends. And people freaked out. It was the most amazing experience for me first, because I was a collector. I had 16 millimeter threading the thing. But for friends who came over, it was like all of a sudden every Saturday night there were people I didn't even know. Hey, I heard this, that, and the other. So when they announced the Betamax machine, in I think it was 76, 77, I thought this is going to be the coolest thing ever. And the only way you could buy the machine in the first 6 months is you had to buy a huge Ben Cartwright console that the thing was in. You couldn't just buy a deck. You had to buy the frickin' $2,000 with the TV, the big old tube, which I did. And then shortly thereafter, I thought, okay, I'm not going to be able to afford to buy or license movies from major studios. So I went to because I was making movies back then, and I went to all the bizarre distributors I knew, and that's when I licensed everything from I Spit on Your Grave later, and Tunnel Vision, GrooveTube, Halloween, all those movies.
All the classics.
All the kind of classics of that era. And I started this company, and by 80, 81, apropos your story, then video stores were popping up all over the place. And then the whole concept of rental did not exist in the beginning. In the beginning, if you went to your local video store, the few that were there, you had to pay $49.95 to purchase the French Connection. You couldn't rent it. The whole rental concept came later, right? And that was also
I remember that.
thing.
It was like people would pay $100 for Star Wars or Jaws or the
porn, especially. The porn was the
porn was very expensive.
ticket.
Well, there were kids at school that would sell porn tapes. Like you have to go and you give some kid $100 and come back with like a VHS tape.
Right.
Like porn was like incredibly expensive.
So it was, and now it's free. Look how the world has completely changed. So going back to that era, you caught it at age 8, because obviously I'm some years older, where you actually were able, at a young age, still to rent and see movies for the first time on video. But then you saw Aliens on the big screen.
Alien
right?
I saw on the big screen. Basically from 79 or 80 on, I would see anything I could. Outland, Alien, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like I got to see Star Wars. Like I came of age. The golden era of horror, I missed Halloween, but sort of by 1980 when the slasher boom happened, I was just old enough to start going to see a couple of them in the theaters with my parents, because they would have to take me. I mean, it's, like my mom's taking me to Prophecy, and I was like, the problem was I would get so excited and nervous I would throw up in the theater. No. And my mom was like, we can't take you because you're going to puke. Like I puked in Dracula, John Badham, I puked Prophecy.
You mean Coppola's Dracula? Or
no. I mean the John Badham, the Frank Langella Dracula. Right. So. And then I had to go to Raiders with a faces melt and prove that I wouldn't throw up. I was like, I didn't. And then after that, I became obsessed with special makeup effects. But there were certain movies that just weren't in the theaters when I wanted to see them. Like I remember renting Pieces in Basket Case, and it was like the greatest night of movies of my life. And even watching Caligula, You know, even the sex stuff wasn't good, but the decapitator machine was one of the greatest things I'd ever seen in a movie.
Right.
So it was great that I mean, Pink Flamingos. Like I just had a list of movies that I had read about in
Now, Pink
movie
Flamingos,
books.
did you see that, or was that a video?
No, that was video.
That was my video, by the way. I had licensed all those movies. And a matter of fact, John Waters was here a few weeks ago. We were talking about
I saw it, yeah.
And it was weird because in the early days of video, again, most of the stores, this is before the big chains and Blockbuster in Hollywood, were mom and pop stores and pretty conservative people. So they got a colorful cover of a video, and I thought, oh, Pink Flamingos. And then, of course,
they had no idea.
They had no fucking idea. And then people came back and explained what it was, and we got returns because it was on one of my labels called Wizard Video.
Yeah, Wizard, of course.
Yeah, that was one of my labels back in the day. And what was cool about Wizard, again, apropos your story about these Italian horror films, especially, where they came to this country kind of redressed as something else with, you know, with all the Italian names gone. What I did, because I was a big fan, I grew up, you know, in the 60s and early 70s in Italy on these movie sets.
My dream.
Well, we'll talk about that. But
I mean, I wore my Italian clothes for you today.
Oh, good, thank you.
Vintage Italian.
Bravo. Adesso possiamo continuare in italiano.
Tutto in italiano.
Perché
Va
ho
bene.
capito che la tua moglie è italiana.
Sì,
Non
sì.
sapevo questo.
No, la mia moglie è italiana.
Ma tu lo
Sì.
parli bene, bravo.
No, non parlo
Molto
bene.
bene.
No, parlo con un americano.
No, no.
Bah, boh.
Vabbè.
No,
That's very
no,
good.
la mia moglie è italiana.
That is great. And
Di
where's
Firenze.
you're his wife, for those
Di
of you
Firenze. My wife's Italian.
right, who don't understand
Di
what we're saying.
Firenze. Torino.
Beautiful.
Sì.
No, let's rewind. We'll get to that. So, yeah, back around 79, 80, by then I'd made maybe 8 or 9 movies. I was starting my own distribution because I got screwed by all the other Ghanaf distributors. However, and one of my trips to Cannes, and because we were doing well with the video business, and I had launched this Wizard video label, which was more cultish. And
Yeah, I remember.
I licensed pretty much every cool Italian horror movie that you can think of right now. I mean, everyone from zombie to the whole gamut. And I licensed them from one of 2 different film owners back in Italy. And because most of the titles needed to be anglicized and most of the art was not very appealing for the video market, all those old movies that are now, I mean, I don't have that license anymore. That's 40 odd years ago. Elsewhere, but a lot of that original art that I had created by some of the great Italian artists of the time, poster artists, these were renderings, still survive. They're still now.
Where are they?
Well, I have some as a collection, but I'm just saying if you go and look at Demoniac and Zombie Lake, you know, these
Of course, beautiful.
Yeah, that's the art that I had commissioned because prior to that, the Italian posters were
not great.
They're not great for this market, and sometimes the titles had to be changed. So I was like really deep.
Did you
into
have the
that.
double bill VHS, or was that Continental, like the Executioner and Frozen Scream, or the Slayer and Scalps?
No, that's not me.
That might have been Continental
Yeah,
video.
I don't remember, but anyway. But it is funny how, and then rewinding back to the 60s.
I love that artwork. God,
Yeah,
where's that original art? Did that any
I have
survive?
some of it. Yeah, some of it. I've kept a lot over the years, but I've had really good stretches and terrible stretches. And when things get bad, you sell everything to kind of pay.
Yeah, who were the first Italians? Was it Fulci, Argento? Who were some of the guys you were licensing
Both
back
of them.
then?
Yeah. But they didn't own the movies. I licensed these movies from the distributor filmmaker guys. You know, those guys never wound up owning any of those movies.
Yeah,
Later
it was
on,
Luciano Martino, wasn't it? Those guys.
I forget. I forget the name, but yeah, there was a lot of. If you look at Wizard Video, because the other thing, we didn't invent it, but we sort of borrowed it, is the porn guys in 79, 80. They were coming out with porno movies in those big boxes, those oversized boxes.
With the trays, with the insert trays.
And I love that size because, you know, more shelf space, which eventually you couldn't do. So all those early Wizard Video movies were in those big boxes.
I told Roger Avery has to cut, and Quentin Tarantino have a whole podcast called the Video Archives Podcast, and they nerd out about each label and the size and if it's a tray. And
I released all those.
You released all those movies.
And I bump into Tarantino every so often. I saw him in Cannes many years ago. Then he was finishing shooting Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And we bumped into each other at a bagel shop, buying bagels. And he's such a cool guy. But he's kind of not here anymore, right? Isn't he?
He's in Israel with his kids, and then he's back and forth, though.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Anyway, and that was a fucking great movie. It should have won. I mean, I don't want to get into politics because I never do, but
no, it's a
that
masterpiece.
It's a masterpiece.
I still listen to the soundtrack probably every day. It's amazing. It's such a brilliant film.
In 20 years, that movie will be
nothing's
no
come
one
close.
will remember who won the stupid award that year. No one will remember.
No, this is the greatest, and DiCaprio's performance where he's playing like 5 different characters.
Everything.
Everything about that movie.
Well, plus it must hit a chord with you as it did with me because it had that whole slice of Italian. He marries the crazy Italian actress. All those posters.
By the way, who I was married to. That's my ex-wife, Lorenza. And we're still friends.
What?
Yeah, Francesca Capucci.
Wait, stop.
Yeah. No, there's another layer.
Wait, are you for real? Is this? Are you real?
No, I'm 100%. She
Okay,
stars
remember, I
in
don't know
Green
shit.
Inferno and Knock Knock. No, Lorenza Izzo.
The girl who played.
The girl plays Francesca Capucci, who plays Rick Dalton's wife
Right.
that he meets Francesca.
You were married to.
I was married to. And I was so happy when Quentin cast her because she met Quentin through me and he loved her in Green Inferno and Knock Knock and read her for
So
Francesca.
let me get this straight.
And he
so
cast
you got
her.
divorced from her.
We split
whatever,
in
you split up.
2018, yeah.
Oh, and now you're with.
And now I'm with Vittoria, who's Italian.
Just Italian chicks.
Well, the thing about Lorenza, she's of Italian descent. She's Napolitana,
Oh.
but she's from Chile. So she grew up in Chile, but her whole family is Italian.
Same thing.
Yeah, the
Latin.
same thing. Yeah, but her eyes, the whole face, she's Italian.
I didn't know that.
Oh no,
I
and we
didn't
stayed
know
friends.
that.
Like we divorced before. We're like, you know what? Let's
Good
stay
for you.
friends, and we split. And she acted in House of the Clock on its Walls, and we were like,
okay.
oh, no, we're all good. I'm really, really
Good.
happy for her.
Good
I was
for
so
you.
happy when she did it, and that she was like in the scenes with Brad and like that. I had also done a Tarantino movie with Pitt, and then she did one also. Like it's only Quentin could make that happen.
Wild.
So yeah.
You blew my mind. I had no idea. So it's actually even
But I
better
loved
than-
it. But I loved, and like that poster art, and then getting the artist to create those.
that look.
Comanche opera.
That's
It's
my
the
life.
original
that was
artist.
That was the world I grew up in.
Yeah,
know?
it's
I
cool.
mean,
There's a guy named Christian McLaughlin who has all of those posters, and he got in touch with there's an artist. Yeah, there's a few different artists that we kind of helped him find, and he tracked down those guys. Those posters are amazing.
They are amazing. And a lot of the ones that I had commissioned for these now well-known horror films, the art was just this size. These aren't huge.
Yeah.
This like literally this size was the original
Amazing.
piece of art that they were able to. There was a father and son team, and they were the most famous, and they're the ones I forget their name. It starts with a C, but they did a lot of those.
Yeah, I follow
those
Enzo
paintings.
Sciatti on Instagram.
Okay.
He's always got all
You're
the
such
old.
you're
All
like
the like
really,
no, he's really got all the old Fulci ones and like Death Box on High Heels,
Wow.
but those classic run of those Fulci early
They
'80s
threw a lot
ones.
of that
He
away.
did all
You know,
those.
that was the tragedy.
I
A lot of that art just get tossed.
I've looked for all of it. I've tried to license it. It's just
That's
gone.
right. So I'm going to go back
Gone.
just for a minute, just because we're talking about Italy, and that's where I
Because
grew
I
up.
put Edwige Fenech and Luc Miranda in Hostel too, because I just wanted to work with them. They came out of retirement to do cameos for me, and Deodato did a cameo for me
Right.
because I'm obsessed with him.
That's great.
I
I
love
thought
the Cabin.
Cabin Fever was a terrific
Oh,
movie.
thanks, man.
And I love the story. I've had a few like this in my career of you raising the money,
Yeah,
producer director, right? Back to that story.
yeah, right. Seemed like a good idea at the time. It's
No, but you, I
Yeah.
mean, unless I'm misinformed, you raised the dough, you made the movie, then you laid it off to Lionsgate, made
Yeah.
a big chunk of profit. Well, that's fucking
yeah,
great.
It's great.
Your parents must have been super happy.
Very
and proud.
happy.
Like, you listen, I know that background and I share part of it. And, the fact that they weren't, pushing you to be a doctor or a dentist or a lawyer.
They were the only ones.
I mean,
they
that's
were
rare.
the ones, and they got a lot of shit from people in the neighborhood. The other parents were like, first of all, letting me go to New York City in 1990 to go to film school. It's like people still thought New York was the Warriors. They had this image of it from 1978.
70s, it was bad. Yeah.
But that stayed through the 80s.
Right.
It's still, Times Square was still dirty peep show.
Yeah.
It was still like, Nightmares in a Damaged Brain, Romano Scavellino's film, or like,
Right.
like a Fulci film, early 80s, like New York Ripper. Like that was still the vibe of it. But my dad, not only that, I remember when we ran out of money and the union shut us down, my dad took all of his retirement. It was like $100,000 and put it into the movie. And I thought, well, now this is bad because now like people are now going to lose their houses and my dad will be like working until he's 100. And then at Toronto Film Festival, we like doubled everyone's money. I was like,
I'm so, I can't help but wiggle into the entrepreneurial side of what we do.
yeah.
And I've done it my whole life. Sadly, when we got back to this country after the amazing years my dad was in Italy and we grew up there, he was broke and his fortunes kind of ran out. So I was literally at ground zero, and then I invented a business and made money, and then I started making movies. But there's no difference. You go right to the fucking mat. You're at the end of, you need to go make payroll, and then a parental unit comes in and helps you out. And it's a great story because
And that was just to get us through the shoot. We still had 2 more days of shooting.
And you had to go post.
And then I had to go and post and beg and give everyone
Now,
points.
which show was this? I'm sorry.
This was Cabin Fever.
Oh, this is the first one.
This was Cabin Fever. And the health problems we developed was terrifying. It wasn't like 100,000. The movie cost $1.5 million. So this was just to get us. We still needed to raise another like 700,000 to negative cut. So we found an editing place that would let us cut for free. And George Folsey, the editor, helped us out, and his son cut it. We were basically cutting it on favors. And then we'd like cut a 10-minute thing and use that to raise 300,000, which could get us to picture lock, and then use that money. And we're on the mixing stage. We'd sent the rough cut VHS to Toronto Film Festival, and they accepted us. And they're like, I was like, can you put us last? Which is a crazy thing to do because most people go to the beginning of the festival because we didn't have time to finish it. And we needed more time to do it. And then we were on the mix stage, and this group of investors from Connecticut were supposed to wire the money to the sound studio. And I was on the stage, and like, we can't start because we haven't gotten the deposit yet. And it's supposed to start at 9, and we're waiting until like 10:30 in the morning, and the deposit's not coming. The investor was showing the VHS to his 12-year-old son. And we said, what do you think? The 12-year-old said, Dad, this is better than American Pie. And they wired the money, and it's just like literally your entire career are in the hands of a child. It's that absurd. It's like Mulholland Drive. Go to the ranch and give the cowboy the password, and everything's back on.
I've had 100 of those experiences in my 40-odd years. I mean, I went to jail for a weekend. I'm talking crazy shit. So you live or perish by the sword, but man, I know just what you went through.
Oh, you know.
How close you were to
we do the thing, the razor, duct tape and chewing gum is how we made Cabin Fever. Right. We would give people checks.
Yeah, but it's a very well produced movie.
Thank you. We shot Super 35, went theatrical, but we would give people the checks on Friday, knowing that they would go to the bank. The bank closed at 5, and then all weekend we're calling and raising money so that by Monday morning we could have it. I was the best. Terrifying.
I have 1,000 really bad stories, but here's a good one. So you can't do any of this today, but as a young guy, and I had many years that things were fucked up, and then there was a good stretch. But before the good stretch, in the 70s, early 80s, you also relied on the fact, not just the timing of checks and payroll and giving them late in the day so they couldn't run to the bank, but you also relied on kiting checks, which I talked to, I forget who I talked to about in this very room. Do you know what that is?
No, I remember.
Okay, let me explain what it is. You can't do it anymore. So,
but I remember hearing it.
Here's how you invented 10 or 20 grand to cover shit when it was not in your account. So you have an LA account. Yeah. I'm sorry, guys. This is what we did.
This is how we did.
It was all for the art. So you have your LA account, right?
It's acting.
But you have to also have either a friend or you have another account under another name in New York, and you have those checks. So when I deposited a check for 20 grand in my LA account, Charles Band Productions, whatever it was, and you were friendly with the bank manager, you had to always be friendly, they would give you immediate credit. But it took 3 days back then for that check to clear your New York account.
Right.
And of course, you had to make sure by the time it got there, the money was there too. That was years of that. Basically, it was a float. Kiting is probably the wrong word.
Float.
But
no,
it's
a
float.
I'm getting flashbacks because I've been right there. And then you find yourself in that position again. I remember on Knock Knock, which was my 5th film, we basically put down our own money of like $50,000 to rent this house that we were going to shoot.
$50,000.
Or $100,000. We put it, whatever it was. We're like, well, we need this shoot, and I didn't have the money, so I went with the producer Cassie, and it was a Colleen Camp call. It was Colleen she's like, we're going to the Oscars, we're going to get the money for Knock Knock, and I remember Lorenz looking at me going, you are out of your mind. We're supposed to be shooting this movie in a month, or it's February. We're going to the Oscars to like beg for money. I go,
someone who wants to.
And so I go with Colleen Camp to the Oscars, and we go out at the bar. And I'm just like, I see like Jack Houston, and we're just talking to people. And I see Cassian Elwes, and he's like, what's going on? What are you doing? We should do another thing like Cabin Fever. And I go, well, actually, I got this movie Knock Knock. And I'm there on my phone. He goes, can you send it to me? And I send him the script. He goes, I'll read it tonight. And then the next morning he called me, and he's like, hey, man, that script's great. What do you need? I was like, well, we need like, probably $3 million. He goes, when are you shooting? I was like, I don't know, 4 weeks. He's like, you need the money right now? So I go, yeah, I rented a house. It's all right. He goes, maybe we should, I bet Keanu Reeves would do it. He goes, if we get Keanu, we'd have to pay him, but we could probably get that money. In like 2 days, the whole thing came together. And we were shooting. And I was like, I would have lost $100,000 if I had nothing. And then we didn't have the rights, and we had to get the rights. Like it was such a mess. We're shooting with that, and even after the movie was done, and we sold it. Lionsgate's like, this chain of title is not really clean, and we had to track down the original writers because it was a dead title. It was the whole thing all the way through was so stressful. But you know, it's funny now. You see, Blonde is out with Ana de Armas, and the director watched Knock Knock and cast her in the movie because he's like, that's my Marilyn Monroe. Yeah. But that was her first English language movie. So now people are like, oh yeah, it's Knock Knock.
So when did you do Knock Knock? Because I missed that one. So I'm like,
I shot it in 2014. It came out in 2015.
Okay.
So a while ago. But then that was sort of my
was
last.
Was she in it? Anna was in
it? Was Ana and
was that
Lorenzo.
her first movie? Probably,
it was her first English language movie. She'd done Spanish language stuff. She'd done movies in Spain.
Good for you.
She literally was over.
Beautiful and so talented.
She's incredible. But she learned it phonetically. She didn't speak any English. But Lorenzo's Chilean. We shot it in Chile, so she could phone. But like she would have to learn it, practice it, and say it phonetically to act in English.
So going back to the entrepreneurial, like, seat of your pants thing, which we both have been through enough, is that behind you now? Are you still, like, when you, I mean, right now, because you're a successful dude and you got the new show, and we'll get into that as well. Do you feel that you've got, because it only, for me, literally, maybe 5 years ago, I finally hit a place where, okay, I'm good enough to do what I'm doing. I'm not really worried about covering checks in 2 weeks on a production. I've been through so much of that, even though there were stretches that were awesome. We had to deal with Paramount. There was money flowing, but a lot of other not awesome years. But like now going forward, are you comfortable with all the shtick you're doing, your businesses?
Yeah. I mean, I start like 30 different, like I started a digital company called Crypt TV, which is evolving. And now I'm just doing a VR project for Meta, which was Facebook, but they wanted to do a horror haunted house short that'll be out. And so I just went to Toronto and shot a VR thing and put that out, and then I'm doing a bunch of shows on.
But you're doing it now.
Discovery Plus.
It's not the model of 5 or 10 years ago or 15 years ago where you're the.
I still kind of am.
Don't do it. I can give you some really good advice.
No, I don't. I will never go and shoot another movie without all the money. Yeah, there's always that bridge period where you're like, this might not come together, but I have to like. I'm willing to lay out 10, 15 grand to go and scout it and prep it and just make sure I can do this. But I will never be like, we're shooting a movie. It's happening. We start in 3 weeks. Your story about
the movie that was going for $3 million is shooting in a month, you didn't have the money. I mean, as a cautionary tale, whoever's watching this does not really happen in real life. That's a fairy tale that you were able to find that money.
But that it worked. The Colleen Camps had come to the Oscars, and we'll go out to the bar and we'll just talk to people at the bar and get drunk and raise the money that way. And that it worked. I mean, that's why. And then Lorenzo starts. She's like, I can't believe. She's like, you're insane. Like, this never happens. You pulled it off. But I had enough movies behind me, and it was cheap enough and at a price point. But it was suicidal. It's like that kind of gun to your head filmmaking. Yeah, and it's bad for your health. Like, it's like, you know, I eat my stress. I get, like, high blood pressure.
No, especially because I was also in the experience of having to go to friends at times just to go, hey, I'm really in a bind. And the money's coming here, but I'm here, and I need this there. And it's like, oh, my God, I don't want to do that anymore. Having said all that, I do want to rewind again back to early on because there's a few things I know about you other than your movies, which I've seen most of. But what was it like working with Stern on Private Parts? Because I'm a fan.
Yeah. Best. I mean, I learned about Howard Stern when I moved to New York when I was 18 because he was only on WOR. He had the WOR show and he was only on local New York radio. So people in Boston didn't know who Howard Stern was. He hadn't gone national yet. It was just a local New York thing. And all my New York friends were like, you got to listen to Howard. And I remember being at Mohonk Mountain House in upstate New York on like his Saturday night WOR show, watching him do like Hooker Hollywood Squares or something, or Crown Heights Jeopardy or one of his insane sketches. So from the time I moved to New York in 1990, I started listening to Stern. So I was a big Stern listener. So, and then I started working in production. I was PA, I was an office PA, and I was good. Like, everybody knew that I'd gone to film school, and I was willing to do anything. I remember my father was like, if you're going to make it, it's like it's a pyramid. It's a very small group at the top. You got to be willing to, you have to be last man standing. You have to outwork everyone. You have to be with a smile on your face.
Smart dad.
27, like he's like, the stuff you'll do at 18, you'll never do at 23. Don't go to grad school. Like, start working on the ground, on sets when you're 18. And there's people that I met when I was 18 that are still, you know, like Brad Pitt's producing partner, Dee Dee Gardner. I remember she was a second AD on a movie I was a PA on when I was 18. Like, you know, you see these people when, you know, I remember when I was Fred Zolo's assistant answering phones, I met Colin Camp, Mark Berg, David Lynch, like all these people that somehow you see later in your life, some of whom you work with, some of you just sort of nod, and they're like, I remember you 30 years ago busting your ass.
Your dad.
answering the
Sounds
phone.
so amazing. I
He's from
was
Brooklyn.
blessed. Beautiful, amazing father. And again, I was lucky that I actually grew up on all these movie sets.
That's like my dream. That's
literally
incredible.
no other.
But Corbucci was Deodato the AD when Corbucci was working with your dad?
I think so. Yeah.
Because he did.
Well, jumping back and forth in time, Corbucci was a gregarious, fun guy. Now I was a kid, so. But I do remember that he would literally get his paycheck and run to the casino. He was a huge gambler and just blow it. So there was always an issue that Monday. How was he doing? Did he win? Did he lose? I mean, I remember these things as a kid. But I mean, I was on, so many different sets. Early on, it was epics with Steve Reeves. We went to former Yugoslavia. And I played the son of Hercules. And this was amazing, amazing time. But then everything became the Italian spaghetti Western.
Mm-hmm.
So I think my dad makes 6 or 7 of those.
Wow.
And
who are the directors?
My dad directed, I think, most of them. Corbucci did Hellbenders. But I do remember, because he became a family friend for years.
And who was writing them at the time?
My dad, and he had a partner named Louis Garfinkel, a writing partner. Went on to do some bigger movies. I forget what they are.
That whole gang going on from the spaghetti Western to the Giallo films.
Yeah, we didn't do. By the time my dad's sort of tenure there was over and things kind of turned not well for him and for the family, the Giallo thing was just beginning. So he never did any Giallos. I mean, early on, my dad has an amazing history. He was assistant director with John Huston. They discovered Marilyn Monroe, Asphalt Jungle. There's all sorts of amazing stories. And his father, my grandfather, was a very famous artist, Jewish artist who only because of his craft kind of saved. His name is Max Band. I'll give you the 3-second story. So it's, World War II, Nazis are close to invading, going into Paris and they weren't in France yet. Anyway, 44, whatever the year was, 43. And my father's father, Max Band, was a working, well-known, successful artist, which is rare in one's lifetime. He formed a school with Chagall. I mean, they were all tied together, Picasso, the whole thing. And then my grandfather, Max, got a gig from the White House. And the gig was come over, which took weeks, right?
Yeah.
Spend a month, and he was commissioned to do the bust of President Roosevelt. Oh. So my dad's an only child. So my dad, grandmother, they sail across the ocean. They pack up their apartment, and they go to the White House to.
This is from where? Where were they?
Paris.
In Paris.
Yeah, my dad's born in Paris. My dad was 16. Didn't speak a word of English. Anyway, they go to the White House. They were there 1 month. This is sittings and the thing. And then my grandfather became very friendly with Roosevelt because of the sitting and whatever they were talking about, amazing stuff. And during that month, the Nazis invaded Paris and went and ransacked. And the few family members that we had, they were all taken away. They're long gone. And of course, they went into all the Jewish apartments and
took
stole
everything.
Shit. So Roosevelt told my grandfather, you can't go back there. And I'm happy to make you, your wife, and your son an American citizen. Where do you want to live? And my dad was a Hollywood film freak. Hollywood, it's got to be Hollywood. And that's the reason why they went to Hollywood. My dad had a really amazing early career with Charlie Chaplin and this, that, and the other, and John Huston stories. He worked on several John Huston films. And then basically in the 50s, he made a movie called Face of Fire. I'm sure you ever saw it.
I've never seen it.
Yeah, I Bury the Living with Richard Boone.
Okay,
These are kind of well-known horror films of the 50s. And he made other films, but those were horror films. And then he didn't like what was going on here in television, and he wanted to keep making movies. So he said, let's go try Paris for a year. He took the family. We were I was 5, my brother was 3. That didn't work out. And then John Barrymore Jr. was a very close friend of his, the father of Drew Barrymore. This is like the late 60s. The early 60s. And Barrymore says, come to Italy. It's Hollywood on the Tiber. This is where the action is. Everyone's making movies here. You do great. So he helped him. The family went by train, Paris to Rome. And I remember, because we were kind of getting comfortable in Paris, never speaking the language, beginning to speak French as little kids. And my dad made a solemn promise. He said to me and my brother, he says, 1 year and we'll go back, because we were missing home and friends and grandparents. Anyway, that 1 year turned into 14 years.
Wow.
So I basically grew up in Italy, learned to speak the language. All my friends were Italian.
Where were you living?
We lived several places downtown. Then most of the years, it was a place called Vigna Clara. And Vigna Clara is on the Cassia, kind of on the way out of Rome, Via Cassia. Just magical years. And of course, all my dad did was make movies. He made movies in Spain and Yugoslavia,
60s,
in Italy, all of that. And La Dolce Vita, and I was a young kid full of piss and vinegar.
Toby
and madness.
Dammit.
Yeah,
it's like being in Toby Dammit.
But here's one funny story now that I've set it all up. So we're in Spain, and my dad's making a movie called A Minute to Pray, A Second to Die with Robert Ryan, Joseph Cotton, and someone else. Okay, Western. And in the same hotel, this unknown Italian director with this American TV actor, Clint Eastwood, they're making A Fistful of Dollars, right? Seriously, so we were hanging out with Clint and became friends, and that friendship actually lasted many years until he became the mayor of Carmel, and then my dad passed away. But anyway, so we're there, sharing a hotel and visiting each other's sets. And I'm a kid. I mean, I was maybe 14 or 13, something like that. But
and you're visiting Leone's set. I love the Eastwood. I love those late '60s anthology Italian.
Great.
Just started watching Boccaccio 70. I've never seen it. It's 3, but great. Le Streghe, Le Fate,
all of those.
Tre Passi nel Delirio.
Magic movie.
But Clint Eastwood in Le Streghe is like amazing.
Also not to keep talking about Italy in that era, but being a big Fellini fan, I met him, and La Dolce Vita had happened some years before we got there. But until probably the late 60s, early 70s, Via Veneto, which is the main street.
Yeah, Canova.
Like
isn't he a Canova Cafe? Wasn't that his place?
I don't know. There was Café de Paris, whatever. But Via Veneto, this strip it's like the Champs-Élysées of Rome, was still that world. Wow. There were Lamborghinis and Ferraris and people parading around.
The Spanish Steps.
No, this is Via Veneto, not the Spanish Steps. Via Veneto is where the Excelsior Hotel is.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Beautiful street.
Spanish
Steps is another place.
But it's close to there.
Yeah. Well, everything's close. So, again, as a kid, just beginning to get a little older and horny and the thing, just going to Via Veneto and just watching the scene, it was just a miracle to be able to experience that. And then
Incredible.
It kind of ended. The 70s. Everything became ugly, things changed.
Yeah, it's different. Yeah, Red Brigade, things.
So anyway, it was a great growing up on those sets, and my dad had me do everything,
It's
everything.
The best. Yeah, that's what I did on set. I was like, just put me on a set, I'll do anything, just to be around it, just to know like art department PA, first team PA, basically like assistant to the director, assistant to the producer, production, like. It's amazing how many people want to direct, and they think by watching movies they know what it is. They don't know anything. It's like saying, "Oh, I watched a lot of basketball. I watched every Lakers game. I could go start. I could coach them. I've watched every game." It's like you don't realize nobody wants to do the actual work. Nobody wants to actually get their hands dirty and learn the craft and the process. I mean, I was on set for probably 10 years before I directed Cabin Fever, and it's a good thing I had that 10 years of just eating shit on sets, and I did budgets and schedules and prep.
Wow.
Yeah, no one would give me money.
Right.
They're like, who the fuck are you? You're 22 going, give me $1.5 million. Like, yeah, okay, if you do a movie for $100,000, and then Blair Witch comes out and they go, do it for $5,000. That's what they just did. Well, it's a little bit different than that. Right. So, but people think that like there is no shortcut. There's no magic. Everybody wants it instantly. No. But you can't, like, that is the joy. My parents were big on, like, the journey is the reward.
You were so lucky to have such great parents,
They were. And it sucks, but all those things that suck, like that worst when you're out at, I remember it was, Tompkins Square Park, it's 0 degrees. I was on this TV show, Central Park West, and there's, like, crack addicts. There's a fight with crack addicts in the street, and they're like, Eli, go take care of it. I was like, okay. So I went to craft services. I go, give me all your fucking soup. And I walk out in the middle of homeless people like fighting, trying to kill each other.
Right.
And I'm this like white kid with a tray of soup, and they're like, what are you doing? And I go, I'm so sorry to bother you guys. We're shooting. We're shooting up on the 5th floor right there, and we have all this extra soup, and we were going to throw it out, but I was curious if you guys wanted it. And they were so stunned. They're like, yeah, okay. And they went out and they all took the soup, and they're like, are we making noise? I go, well, I don't know, maybe if you could just, when we're rolling, if you guys could keep quiet, I'm here with a walkie. They're like, oh, yeah, sorry. And we sat and said soup, and I'm like, do you know what I mean? It's like that. It's so easy. I was like, you don't come out and go, we're making a movie. Right? You just come out with soup. And I would do it with construction workers. I was like, do you have any ice cream? I'd walk up with ice cream and candy, go, I'm so sorry to bother you guys. We have extra ice cream. Do you guys want it? And they were like, yeah. Or are we making noise? Like all of those tricks, but that's how you learn. And then, when shit goes haywire on Cabin Fever, you're like, okay, I can do this, I can do that. I know how to schedule, I know how to budget, I know how to post it.
And growing up in the family that you had and your Italian relationships, and me in Italy, it's about being simpatico, which means sympathetic. Yes. It's about being I mean, I charm my way in and out of so much fucking shit. Just, I mean, not like
No, you have to.
but because it's just my nature anyway.
Yeah.
You know. So I mean, I'll give you one other quick Italian story. So I'm 15 and I'm already driving in Italy with a learner's permit from California. I looked older, so which is good. You know, I looked like I was 18, 19. I think you had to be 21. And because the nightlife didn't really exist, there was one club called Teen Club. And in Italy, growing up, I went to a school called the Overseas School of Rome. There was also Marymount, all chicks, really pretty chicks, and Notre Dame. That was pretty much it. Okay, what can I say? And these kids needed somewhere to go. So Teen Club was in the basement of a church. Sometimes you'd have it's not a place where you could really get down. Not that we were doing anything evil. This is even before smoking weed.
No, I get
This
it.
was just
But
beer.
it's strict
you want to
with the
like grab
priests are watching
boobies.
everything.
You want to get the slow
want to be
down.
a teenager and
all
slow
that
dance,
shit.
yeah.
So I decided I'm going to open a club because a little bit more risque possibly. And I found a place right off of the Fountain of Trevi. It was a cantina, and Rome is built on Rome. So this was the cantina, which is down below, like a basement, was actually the top of a 4-story building buried. So we dug down I rented it for nothing. It was like $300 a month. My girlfriend at the time, who I then married, Mita in the name of the video company later, she and I cleaned, we black light, blue light, painted shit, and I decided so I wouldn't risk being arrested because I knew at 15 I couldn't do anything that I was doing.
Like starting a business of a nightclub.
Yeah. No, I did it all. I'm getting to the end, so I don't know why I'm telling the story. So basically, I thought, okay, since these are all students, if I sell a membership card to the club, and I called it Chaba for Charles Band, which is like really lame, I know. But if I sold the Chaba Club for 10,000 lira at the time, which may be $7, a lifetime membership card, then it's like a private club. And in my mind, never talking to an attorney, I just figured it's a private club. And if someone says anything, these are my friends, it's a private club, we're not doing anything wrong. Fixed the place up, announced it, sold about 200 of these cards. So suddenly I got a wad of money. In Italy, 10,000 lira was a bill this big. It was a fucking huge piece of paper. And and it was opening night. And of course, what happened was all these kids were driving those little motorini, and these are kids age maybe 13 to 17. The oldest was 17. I was 15. And everyone was making all this noise and shit. Then they got there, and it was great. Of course, I had a friend, my closest friend, who we sold beer kind of under the table. At the end, he got high. He was just giving the beer away. So he had a bunch of drunk, kind of fucking crazy kids. They all got on their motorcycles at about 11 at night. And this is a residential area. This is literally 30 yards from the Fountain of Trevi.
Yeah.
And it was like, 20 horses, riding out of town, nothing but noise. So the next Saturday or whatever it was, I forget the day, the cops came. This is my simpatico story. The cops came, and I told them in the club, because we had like 80, 90 people in this airless fucking, basement.
Fire trap.
Oh, fire trap, no air, just fucked up. But I told the guys who were helping me, I said, if the police ever come, get me. Because first I speak Italian, and I know I could charm them. Yeah. So sure enough, I was deep in like the second basement below the basement. My friend I was trying to calm things down. Charlie, the police are here, the police. So I come out, allora che succede? My little 15-year-old dude, and they go, who is the owner? And I go, well, I'm renting in Italian, perfect Italian. They were freaked out that there's this American-looking dude spoke Italian. I said, well, I'm renting this, and this is a private club, and I showed my little card, and they said, well, how old are you? I said, well, I'm 15, 15. Is there liquor down there? And anyway, they went down, and they said, well, your biggest problem is no air down here, other than the fact that you've broken every single law. Anyway, that was the end of my club as being an entrepreneur. Yeah. But I didn't get in any trouble, which I could have, because I was very simpatico. Yeah. Mi dispiace. Yeah. Really? There's an air issue? That's shocking.
Whatever, I know. That's how you got to do it. That's how you got to do it. Anytime repair person, we have this villa outside Florence. You can't, if the guys come to deal with the Hornets, which was the problem this summer. Oh, murder hornets. It's like they came off a baseball cap. These things are this big, these giant Italian hornets trying to kill me. And then, the guy that comes to fix the dishwasher, you got to make them the coffee, chat it like.
For sure.
That's how I get good at making coffee. So like, and then because then they'll come back and fix it again. Because otherwise, if you don't have good coffee, they're not going to fix anything.
You know, I bought.
And I have to shtick. I'd have to do like the Margariti. Like I got a song
but it's
and
also
dance
the right way
for
to
the
be,
I know for
and
the
usually because I've been involved.
Screen guy, it's a whole thing.
I had a castle there for years. I bought the
with Meridian,
Studios, Meridian amongst many, in the Pendulum. I bought the ex Dino De Laurentiis Studios in the 80s. We made a lot of movies there for a brief period of time, then ran out of money. But at the end of the day, you not only have to be that way, but then you have to listen, because anybody in any technical realm, if it's the garbage guy, this guy, the fixer, then they're going to explain to you in vivid detail, in Italian,
everything.
Why the thing, the gizmo, the click knob, the Motorola, the guy.
You got to talk. You got to
really. That's amazing.
I know you have to do all that.
That's why you can't get too much espresso.
By the way, I know. I looked at the Meridian. And I just thought, God, how does he deal with the electricity and the water and the air conditioning? I mean, just the whole thing of the villa in Tuscany was such a fantasy. And this summer really cured me of it, just because I was like, the internet, if it's 500 megabytes a second download here, it's at 3 there. And it got up to 100.
Wait. So you have a villa?
Yeah.
Where is it again?
It's Impruneta.
Okay, I know exactly where that is. And
beautiful.
For how many years have you had the place?
It's been 2 years, but now I'm like going to get rid of it because I just can't. It's like I can't. I was going to buy it.
I can tell you every trick. I've done this now since '82.
Do you own a villa there now?
I own a. It was a fortress 500 years ago.
Yeah, this was built in 1250.
Yeah,
it was a Templar villa.
Older. So this fortress was around 15th century. Then it became a mill. Then it just became a pile of rocks. It was a run. But most of it was buried underneath the ground. So the project, which has now been, I got this in 1990. We dug it up, and now we're with all sorts of permits, slowly restoring tunnels.
Oh wow!
It's amazing.
The whole thing.
The whole thing.
Do you have to go there to?
I have someone, because I owned a castle for 30 years in the same area. And that sounds, yes, I owned a castle, which I also lost during difficult times. But because of that, and it's in the same area, Giove, it's between Rome and Florence. I have first an amazing, like my brother who works for me there. So I have a guy on point. Without that, you have
nothing. No, I don't have that guy, and I don't speak Italian.
You need you speak actually a really
but you speak like I need to know that level of technical.
Anyway, so I have the guy, but also because of the restoration, I owned the castle for 30 years. It was 100,000 square. It was the biggest castle in Umbria.
It's amazing.
This was like crazy.
I know.
But because of that, over the many years, I became friends with everyone working now on the mill or the fortress or whatever you call it. So it's having the guy, very important. You need an on-site person. And then you just learn all the tricks. I mean, for instance, you said you had an internet issue.
Yeah.
You couldn't get it. But
there's
a million ways. Well, if you're going to get rid of it, who cares? But, there's a dish you can get that is not expensive that can pump in the internet correctly at the right. In other words, I don't know. You probably just signed up for some internet thing.
Oh, no. We had 8 guys come out with the drones and look at the thing, and they're like, there's basically like this internet because the cable only goes this far. So if you want to get this internet, because it's not close enough to Florence, but it stops here. And the guys looked, and they bring a refrigerator, and they're like, this is what we need to power it, and it's going to be very loud next to your bedroom. I was like, this is insane, and it's 2,000 euros a month. Now Starlink exists. You can get the Elon Musk system. That'll do it.
Years ago, not for the castle, because we were lucky there with some connection, but
this is so far. People are just like, we thought you guys were going to talk about Puppet
What
Master.
a bunch of
I rented
dicks.
Ghoulies on
Wait a
VHS.
minute. They're talking about their
villa
and their
villas.
castle.
We got to delete this.
Okay. No. It's okay. We could. This is.
But Italian cinema, like you, I mean, Suavi. There's so many of my favorite filmmakers that you not only worked with, you brought to America, and that's what created me. That's what influenced me.
Here we are, and okay, but. All right, so Howard Stern, but he was fun.
So Howard Stern was the best. So I worked. So Howard Stern.
Right.
We started Howard Stern. We went to villas in Italy.
Of course.
So the production manager, like there was someone I'd worked on this TV show, and they were kind of the crew. They were like, look, they're going to shoot private parts in this summer, but it's March and this freak snowstorm hits, and they're like, they want to go and film this thing with Gary and these girls where it's like they're asking them to take their tops off, and they need like a PA to do it and to take the film and to take the releases. And we trust you, and we know like Stern. So I go, and they're like, it's this girl come in. They're like, Howard's first job interview, 1971. And Gary's like, can you take your top off? And he was like, what? So he's getting these girls to undress. Cars are driving by, and they're like going, Baba Booey, Baba Booey. They're these strippers that he's got in the middle of in the median, and I'm like the PA, and I have to give them their SAG papers. And I walk in, and the girls are changing. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. They're like, Eli, we're strippers. We don't care. Like, we do this every day. I'm like, all right, I'm not looking. Oh, that's
great.
I was like this nerd.
Come on, you
and then I've never. And then they turn the camera around with Gary, and they're like, do you want to be on camera? Like, the DP didn't want to do it. And they're like, Eli, you got to be on camera. So I'm holding the camera, and Gary's, it's like in the reverse. And so now I'm acting in it. And then they go to shoot the movie.
I'm going to have to watch this again.
Well, they of course they cut it because Betty Thomas was like, less Eli. But then during the shoot happened, they're like, do you want to work? They're like, you know what, Eli, Howard's going to be, we're building an apartment for him at Silver Cup Studios. We don't want to leave him by himself. Do you want to just like show up at Rap and, you know, and then you can just stay there all night with Howard and then you'll go home in the morning. I'm like, yeah, sure. I can sit outside his door in case he needs anything. They're like, because there weren't apartments at Silver Cup. And so I would show up at Rap, and he'd cast Mary McCormick, who randomly I'd been friendly with. So the first day he's shooting his like love scene with Mary, and I hadn't met Howard, and she's like, "Bye, Howard. Thank you so much. Great day." And she's like, "Bye, Eli," and like grabs me and gives me this huge kiss to fuck with Howard. So then the elevator door closes. I'm like, he's either gonna love me or I'm like, bye, Mary. And he's like, Eli, getting down with my movie wife. All right, how do you know? Like, and he was so funny and he was so nice. He used to talk about me on the radio, and then he had me on. You know, for like Cabin Fever, I went on for Hostel. God, the sweetest guy. He was so nice, and I used to like listen to see if he talked about me on the radio. But it was this amazing experience. Then they were doing reshoots. They're like, you might want some more scenes with Howard's, you know, cameraman. So there's a scene outside the Met with a girl and a donkey and Baba Booey, and I was waiting. I was with a whack pack in the van, and the conversation they had was like, hey, can I see your daily news? My what? My daily news. I like to stay informed. And it's Fred the Elephant Boy and Crackhead Bob. He's like, your daily news. I mean, I was like, wow, I'm like the obsessive Howard Stern fan to the point where I like sat outside his door every day and then listened. I still have my crew jacket. That's the only crew jacket I saved. Was my private parts crew jacket. Wow. I was actually in a van with the full the Cole Bass female bodybuilder with everybody. It was just amazing. I was so into it.
That is so cool.
I loved him.
What an experience.
Loved him.
And I got to jump to one more celebrity dude that I'm a big fan of. You got to tell me, or us, a little bit about shooting Inglourious Basterds with Tarantino.
Oh, the best.
I mean, you know, I can only imagine.
Oh, it was a wild time. I mean, you know, I was like, when he was writing it, I was like, it's Quentin's Jewish technical advisor. He's like, Eli, what did you get?
Jew Bear, is that what it was?
The Bear Jew, yeah.
The Bear Jew, okay.
And I invited him to my Passover Seder. I was like, if you really want to understand Jews, have you ever been to a Seder? He's like, no. I was like, come to my Seder. So like, we were, you know, Boston Jews. My parents in New York, but you know, we grew up in Boston, and so we were like doing our masshole accents, like manish to not lie like that, dude. Like jokingly doing, you know. But it was all, you know, reading the 4 questions, like, why is this night different from all others, kid? You fucking retard.
Comedy
like, throwing it, yeah. And so Quentin loved it and had a great time and kind of fit right in, and my whole family loves him anyway. So, you know, we did, and he's like, I think this will really kind of help me write chapter 5. And then he's like, you know, I can't get you out of my head as the Bear Jew, because I had acted in Death Proof for him. He's like, but this has got to be like a full role. And I remember I was like, dude, are you casting? Like, I remember the night before, because he'd been auditioning everyone, and his whole thing is everyone auditions for me. And I was like, okay, he just doesn't want me in the movie. Then he called me. He's like, dude, I'm going to Berlin like tomorrow. Dude, let's go get dinner. So we go to dinner, and he's like, look, man.
Is this here in L.A.?
This is in L.A. It's like some dinner on Beverly. And I'm like, okay. He's like, listen, you know, I really think that, and he had me at his house reading the first 18 pages. He's like, I wrote and he had read me the whole Hitler Bear Jew scene years ago, like when I did a Hostel, like when it was a stack of handwritten notes. So I knew all about it. And he's like, look, man, Donowitz has to be a 360-degree character. This can't just be like Death Proof where we go in and we throw in a bunch of jokes. It's got to be like a backstory. And I was like, wait, are you saying I've got the role? He's like, yeah, listen. I was like, wait. Should we have a toast? Yeah, cheers. Listen, it's got to be a 360-degree. It was like, and I was like, I thought you were auditioning all these other, you know, Jewish actors. He's like, yeah, you already had the role. I was auditioning them to see if they were going to beat you. And I was like, wow. And so I was like, well, listen, man, you know,
cool
you're going to have another director. I was like, I'll drop everything, commit my life to this role. This is the most important thing I've ever done. Like, if you need it, like you have another director there, and I know you're racing to make the Cannes Film Festival because it's September. We hadn't shot yet. And he's like, no, I don't do second unit. I shoot all my own stuff. And then after 2 days, he calls me. He goes, get the fuck over here. I was like, people ask me all these questions he goes about Nation's Pride, this whole black and white film within the film. He's like, I don't want to deal with all this shit. I just need some gunfire shots. So I prepped while I'd be like up at 4 a.m, lifting till 6, rehearsing, shooting. Then I would have production meetings about Nation's Pride while he was shooting the tavern scene. I shot that in Görlitz, and then I cut it Sally Menke had my own editor. I was cutting and doing. Finally, by the end, I had an answer print of a 5.5-minute film that I had shot. So in the theater, I'm blowing up my own. So Quentin's like, I need to do the shot of Zoller and Shoshana when Zoller's like thinking and who wants to send a message to Germany, but all the other shots are yours. I need to, and I gave him. In 3 days, I had my brother come over. We got like 300 setups in 2 days. Like people, stunt people doing. I mean, I was shooting World War II. I was like, more swastikas, more swastikas. It was so much fun. And so then at the end of and then he put my mom in as a Nazi. We got my parents to Berlin, which they swore they would never go to. They loved it. And they were like, it's all changed. It was a big emotional moment. But at the end of the movie, I was like there with my parents. My mom's dressed as a Nazi, watching the premiere of my own thing. And then I burned the theater down. It was like the most crazy, wild. And then afterwards, I went to the Cannes Film Festival and then the premiere, and I just went around with Quentin. We screened it for Holocaust survivors. I like really stuck with Quentin the entire run through every festival, through the DVD release party. It culminated at the Academy Awards when Christoph won.
And when you think of it with everyone's history, our history, I mean, what always freaks me out is as a little kid in the 50s, I don't know, because of the stories I heard and my grandparents who luckily because of art has saved our family. You know, it was because of the sculpture, the thing that they were here and the Nazis in Paris. And I kept thinking, you know, maybe it was 57, 58. I mean, you know, World War II was just 10 years before that or 12 years. It wasn't like some medieval thing and it's fucking
and
like.
It just happened.
It literally just happened. And it still just happened. And
I know.
I mean, what a mind blower for you to actually, when you're a family, your mom is playing the Nazi, you're there with Quentin, you're in frickin' Berlin.
How about the fact that everybody, my grandfather's in Poland. It's like Austro-Hungarian, Russian, Polish. Right. So there's a side of the family from Vienna that was my mother's mother, that there were like all the relatives and cousins that got out, that anyone that didn't get out was killed.
Yes.
So you're just like, and to go back there and actually shooting Hitler. My dad wrote a story for the Jewish Journal an article called "My Son Killed Adolf Hitler," and I was actually me at the Cannes Film Festival when people were like, "How can you do this? How can you do this?" And I was saying, "Oh, it's kosher porn," which everyone's like, Quentin's like, but I said, you know, it's like even though the movie's fantasy, there's a truth to the fantasy. It's a fantasy that we've all had, so it's a real fantasy, and there's validity in that. And expressing that, there's this cathartic thing that we've all thought of. What if we could go back in time and kill Hitler? Quentin gave that to us. Right. He gave us that, and it took a non-Jew to do it.
Right.
And it was Quentin's really, you know, he's really an amazing person. And I always thought, you know, now I can be an actor's director. Like I always thought of myself as like I could do set pieces and moods and kills and fun characters and stuff, but I never thought like I'm going to be an actor's director. It's always going to be about the kills. Right. And after that, I was like, now I have permission. Now I understand it. I've been there with Christoph Waltz and Brad Pitt.
As we say in Italy, hai maturato. Matured. You know?
Yeah, and that's where I never could have done Knock Knock had I not done Inglourious Basterds. Or then I'm, you know, working with a star like Bruce Willis, or you know, actors like Jack Black and Cate Blanchett, and you know, now you like have that full confidence of like, I know what I'm doing, I know how to do this.
You're there, you've been there. You get
I know how to act, and also once I was in that fire where we almost died because the fire burned out of control.
I didn't know that either.
It almost collapsed. Yeah, it was very close to us, you know, and got burned. It got serious, but it's an amazing sequence. But I was like, okay, after I've done that, I don't want to hear any shit from actors like I'm cold or this is too hot. I was like, see that scene right there? That's me being in an oven. That's real fire. And when I'm wincing and burning and my hands are burning, like I passed out after that scene.
But you know, having worked with thousands and you know, and some real wacky ones, whether it's Klaus Kinski or I mean, it doesn't really matter how you get there. You know, I mean,
I can't believe you got to work with Kinski.
That was. I mean,
which one was that?
It was called Crawl Space.
Crawl Space, yeah.
Fucking weird movie. And he almost, I didn't direct that, produced it. We shot it at the Empire Studios, ex-Dino De Laurentiis Studios. And he had a beef with the director.
So he pulled out a gun?
He pulled out a knife to the guy's throat.
Who was the director of Crawl Space?
David Schmoller was this guy's name. Anyway, there's so many stories, but having worked with so many frickin'
lunatics.
Well, and wonderful non-lunatics. But at the end, it kind of, all that matters is how you gently get them to where you want to go, you know, at a certain point. So what are you doing now that we've sort of got a little bit of a...
Good
Oh, and by the way,
question.
stop, because I always forget the shit. Here's my book, okay?
Thank you very much.
Which I think you'll find reminiscent of many of the stories and your stories, because by the seat of your pants sort of stuff. And HarperCollins came to me during the pandemic, and you know...
look at that. What a business.
Well, a little spiel. But Yeah, I work with a wonderful biographer, a guy named Adam Felber, was for 11 years the head writer on the Bill Maher Show, who I also gave the first movie to. Bill Maher, he made a movie I made called Cannibal Women in the Avocado Jungle of Death. That was the first gig before he started, politically and all that silliness.
Wow,
but so what's the current Eli Roth shtick now? I mean, other than what you said earlier about
the current shtick is I get these like different ideas for TV shows and Travel Channel, which is going to be, it's sort of like don't think of us as travel. It's more like paranormal.
Right.
I was like, what if you had a stalker that was a ghost? So we're going to call it Supernatural Stalker, but it's called a ghost ruined my life. A ghost ruined my life.
Right.
I thought, well, stalkers are like specifically like romance or upset.
Right.
But a ghost ruined my life. People whose just lives are like, and then but it's the ghost. I couldn't go to work because the ghost followed me there.
Oh, that's fun.
Found all these people. We did that for a Travel Channel, which then got absorbed by Discovery and is now part of Discovery Plus, which is now Warner Brothers. Season 1 is out, and then I did a show called The Haunted Museum with this guy Zach Baggins.
Right, I heard about that.
And it went great.
Where do we find that?
These are on Discovery Plus.
Tell people where to find all this stuff.
Discovery Plus.
Okay.
And it's weird. And so now we're doing season 2 of Ghosts From My Life. I have a new show called My Possessed Pet. I was like, do pets get possessed? I look at my dog. I look at my dog, and I was like, you are possessed by a dead child. I'm talking to a dead child. Because he sits like a human, looks at me, does the weirdest stuff. It's the weirdest dog I've ever had in my life.
Maybe it's the interpreter who sees.
It's possible, but we found people. It's like, we had a tarantula, and then his personality changed, and it was. But it's all these people who love their pets, but the pets get possessed.
No, it's very clever. Wait, so you're too fast here. So you've conjured up these shows.
Yes.
You go sell them to
Discovery
the
Channel,
Discovery
Travel Channel,
and now you're making these.
Yeah, we're producing them with this company called Cream Productions out of Toronto. So we have that Urban Legend. They came to me with we're like, we don't want to continue it as a movie series, but how about do it as anthology? So use the same team from Haunted Museum.
Oh, wow.
That's coming out in October on Discovery Plus. And then a special for the Haunted Museum we're doing again. There's a special on Halloween. I have this thing called Trick or Treat that I'm doing for Meta Facebook that'll be out on VR. But really what's going on is I'm in the middle of this movie Borderlands for Lionsgate, which is a big, fun, awesome action movie based on the video game.
You're prepping this movie?
No, we were shooting.
Oh.
We stopped and we edited, and then we said, okay, we're gonna do some pickup stuff, like add some more scenes, beef some stuff up. Well, the pandemic has thrown, and we have Kate Blanchett, Jamie Lee Curtis, Kevin Hart, Jack Black, the most amazing cast.
Jesus, well done.
Coordinating everyone is really hard because everyone's schedules are so insane.
Right.
Because you get on a movie, okay, they're free, but COVID just keeps pushing other people's stuff. So we're basically waiting. We think maybe it's January, maybe it's March. We have like 2 weeks. Yeah, we have like a little bit more stuff to do, but I can't get the actors all together to do it. So we're just literally in this weird thing where the movie's basically done except this other stuff, and then it'll be finished.
Fantastic.
So yeah, and then I have other horror movies that are ready to go. But yeah, it's one of these things where you really do surrender. Kind of pre-pandemic, we'd be like, we're shooting at that day. Now you're just like, you know what? It's COVID. Anything can happen. I'll stay busy on these other shows.
Or as one of your Italian wives or your Italian lovers would say, ma fa tutto bene, con calma.
Con calma, tutto bene. Bo. That's the other one. Bo.
Okay, so I've got to explain to people what bo means. So
how do you explain it?
No, you explain it. You're better than me at this.
No, you're in Italy. It's just like, I don't. It's like, bo. It's like in France they go.
No.
And bo is like.
You got to set it up better.
It's like, dude.
So if you ask someone in Italy a question and they don't know the answer to the question, it is literally a sound they make that means I don't know the answer, and it's bo.
Bo. But they have to do this face.
You're not doing it right.
Bo.
No, it's bo.
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 Or it's like, also, well, what did you expect? Bo. Like, it's almost like, dude, it's like, be used a few different ways.
No, that's true. That's actually very funny.
You know, it's almost like, allora.
Fammi sapere.
Allora.
So any final words of wisdom to all these? Remember, people are watching this. You know, your story is a great story. It's unique. One of the things we have in common is I was blessed with a fantastic father who I miss dearly, who when I was a kid, you know, all my friends, mainly Italian, but some Americans, you know, their parents were sort of like the crew cut, right wing sort of. They were not cool. My dad was the cool man because he was.
My parents were the cool parents, for sure.
He was an artist and he was ahead of his time, and he was I mean, when I started falling in love with music and the Beatles as a kid, he would sit with me and listen to it and love it too. And he was just like my brother.
Yeah, everybody loves my parents. I started taking my parents around Hollywood almost as a weird experiment because they're like New York Jews out of a Woody Allen movie, and everyone's like, "We love your parents." Then people started hanging out with my parents without me.
Yeah,
they're like, "I just want to have dinner with your parents."
But that's
we
a
love
blessing
them.
to have.
I love them.
Parents.
Yeah, no, it's great.
I
bought a house.
Parent.
I moved them from Boston.
Oh, they're here.
My
now?
dad was a professor at Harvard, so like, I'm a psychiatrist.
Are they still?
And I was like retired.
Around or
oh yeah, they're still alive. Yeah, I was with them yesterday.
Ah, sweet.
Yeah, it's great. No, I bought them a house in Lake Hollywood, and they're like, so we could have a place for my brothers are here, so we could all do family stuff there.
That is awesome.
They love it. They call it their Hollywood ending.
Awesome, dude. This has been so great.
Charles, what a pleasure.
Yeah, well, we could keep
really
talking,
great.
but there's a point where people are there probably because a
they're
lot of
already
people.
Over. What would I tell any people ask me for advice? I would say definitely, write something that's unique, that's your own, and go out and do it. And you can do it now with a 5D, with a camera. There's, you can shoot trailers. Find any way to get it done and just do it. But it's got to be something that's a movie that you want to see that you've never seen before that only you could do. That's what I think cuts through. It's authenticity and originality.
Yeah, and it's 90% perseverance. You just got to keep slamming away. This is not
and don't be afraid
not
to get
an easy business. And
it's a marathon.
Your advice earlier is true and tried. Yes, film school and all that stuff, but you need to find a way to get on a set and work for free. You need to get into the craft of movie making so you get it.
You will have
it won't be a mystery.
You will get killed if you think you can just show up on a set and go. You'll get crushed. And by the way, the actors will sniff it out in 2 seconds.
Oh yeah.
And because it's not about what all the prep in the world. It's just prepping you for tap dancing and improv. It's like, how good are you when everything goes wrong? Right. When the actor's late, when the wardrobe truck didn't show up, when the camera breaks. How do you fix it and come up with solutions when everything gets completely fucked up? That's the test of a director.
That's also being an entrepreneur and living through crazy shit and knowing how to shuck and jive. You got to know how. Yeah. The other thing, which I don't know, I'm getting back and talking about my dad for a minute, but one of the things that he taught me, and we have a similar temperament, is whereas especially back in the 60s, your favorite era with all these crazy movies, it was more permissible for actors to be completely dramatic and crazy.
Totally insane.
I mean, throwing tables
Toby
over,
Dammit.
burst of madness on set.
Yeah, Oliver Reed, Peter O'Toole.
Oh, and I worked with Oliver Reed, on Pit and the Pendulum. Oliver Reed, Lance Hendrickson. Anyway, but my dad had a way of just calming things down because you also need to keep,
I was a camp counselor for 3 summers, and I was in charge of a group of 10 and 11-year-old boys, and that is the same skill. Yeah. I learned more about directing being a babysitter and a camp counselor than I ever did in film school. I didn't realize that was it's like the Karate Kid when you suddenly wax on, you're like, the paint the fence, that's what this is. Like all that training. Yeah. And I love kids, and it was great with them, and I was funny, and it was all that stuff. It's what made me I know this behavior. I know how to handle
You
this.
are super maturo now. You're ready for anything. You're doing like 9 TV shows and finishing them.
I'm acting in a show, which is really fun. Yeah, called The Idol that Sam Levinson's doing.
I'm not.
It's so fun. He did the show Euphoria. He's Barry Levinson's son. He's a really fantastic director.
And this is a series?
It's a series for HBO. He's like, you want to be in it? And I was like, sure.
Can we see it or is it not?
I don't even know when it's going to come out. We're shooting it right now.
What character? What kind of a character?
I'm not allowed to say anything, but it's very funny. It's fucking crazy. It's full on. It's the most fun I've had acting since Inglourious Basterds.
Amazing.
Like for real. It's really like it's gonna be nuts.
That's great.
It's full on. It's
all right, guys. Remember all this, whoever's watching this, and tune in because you're creating so much fun stuff.
Just keep them busy.
Thanks again.
Thanks.
Ciao.
Ciao.
A dopo. A presto.
A presto.
You ever see Head of the Family? I made the current movie is number 366 we're shooting.
He made a Stormy Daniels film. Morgan Fairchild and Virgin Hunters, God bless. Last Foxtrot, Mansion of Doom.
That's sort of like the beginning, so you have to go all the way down that way.
Of course.
You get a little...
Tourist Trap. Yeah, Tourist Trap is on... that's on Parasite in 3D. I remember when that came out.
Demi Moore's first
Metalstorm. I didn't know you did the destruction of Jared's.
As a matter of fact, I didn't tell the story, but it's similar to your Lionsgate story. I made a movie called Parasite in 3D.
I remember that, yeah.
And the fellow I dealt with back in the day, his name was Robert Ramey. He ran AFCO. Then he went on to be briefly the head of whatever it is at Universal. So we kept in touch, and then I decided, okay, I'm going to make, again, this is my money, another 3D movie, and I wanted to make sort of a Mad Max thing. So I made this Metal Storm film, and halfway through the movie, he gets wind of it. This is back, no cell phones. You had to run to some little office, and the guy's handing you the phone. He says, "Charlie, show me a few minutes of your movie, because if it's any good, I will buy it from you." Because what had happened is they were releasing Jaws 3D.
I remember.
Okay, remember that?
Yes, I do.
And they equipped 2,000-3,000 theaters with the silver screen and went through all this expense, and he needed something else to put in there, you know, to take advantage of him having set up all these 3D screens. And I was just happened to make Metal Storm. So I quickly, over the weekend, and I was directing this thing, no rest, and we cobbled together 20 minutes of scenes. And he offered me $3 million for US rights.
Wow.
So that was the single biggest, like, because
But the 3D was
the picture
good.
was like 900 grand.
Because I remember
good.
there was the red-blue 3D.
Yes.
But then Jaws 3D was the
This
first
was
time
stereo
there was
vision.
it was like the clear, polarized. And I remember Metal Storm had some
It's the
really
same,
great. I saw it in the
Yeah,
theaters.
that was fun. You saw it in the theaters?
Of course I saw it in the
Fucking
theaters.
crazy.
Of course, well, Reanimator's the greatest.
Yeah.
I should have told my Reanimator story because of TerrorVision. Troll, of course. By the way, I was so funny because I was like just giving my composer reference for this VR thing I'm doing, and it said music from Troll.
Okay.
I was like, I want it to sound like the like.
Well, that's my brother, who's unfucking
I know,
unbelievably talented. Use him for something. He's
incredible.
His
Reanimator score is.
He's an eccentric weirdo. He doesn't have an agent. People go, "How do we get in touch with your brother?" Yeah, but he's so
Reanimator theme is beautiful. Reanimator. I had a big thing where I remember in like 7th grade, everyone was going to watch Breakfast Club at this because it was a party. It was the first party I was invited to. Don't ask why. I brought a VHS of Reanimator, and I was watching Breakfast Club. I was like, I have a much better movie. And I put it on, and it was literally like the whole party. It was like me and one other person. People were like, "You are sick." It's like, but this is why would you want to watch?
VHS
Why would you want to watch? It was a VHS for Reanimator. Then of course I maybe it ripped because I figured out how to do Epizoids, Galactic Gigolo. God, so many. These are my favorite Salted Killer Bimbos.
That's right.
God, these are my favorites. So many good.
There it is.
Yeah, Beach Babes from Beyond, which I rented on Laserdisc. God, these are so fun. I love the old. This is like what forms you.